Hi there, good evening everybody. It's Rick Adams on Facebook Live. I'm inside the home of a family who has had a family member missing for 2 years. This is a gentleman by the name of George Kuhn. He is in a wheelchair. He's been missing for 2 years, and we're trying to get some answers to see what's going on. And we do have his sister here. I'm going to turn around the camera. It's Fran Lacker. I was going to talk a little bit about what's been happening with her brother missing. And Fran, thank you so much for joining me. And first off, just talk a little bit about George and kind of what it's been like for you, not knowing what happened to him, where he is for the last 2 years.
It's been the toughest 2 years that anybody could ever want to go through. When you lose somebody when they're sick or they're dying and they have an illness, there's closure, you grieve, and you know how to go on with life. But when you lose somebody you love and you don't know what happened to them or where they're at, or if they went peacefully, you have no answers, it leaves a big hole in your heart, and there's just no room for closure.
Now, he's been missing. He's in a wheelchair, and yeah, just talk about the emotions you feel as a family.
Fear, panic. We know that something had to have happened to him bad because George could not even get himself mobile out of the wheelchair without the assistance of somebody lifting him. So knowing that he's gone and missing and that the worst probably has happened to him, it's the pain, knowing how much did he suffer? Did he suffer?
Okay, what do we know right at the moment about his disappearance? Talk about that.
We don't know anything more than the woman that he left with to go over there to meet was the last person to speak to him or see him that we know on record.
Okay, and the person you're talking about is a woman he met online.
Yes, it was a woman that he met on Backpage.com. He thought that he was meeting a girlfriend, I guess, because he was severely brain damaged, so he would believe anybody. And this woman lived on the other coast of Florida and took a bus over to Venice to spend a weekend with him in a nursing home. And she apparently found out that George had a hefty disability check come in every month, and he wasn't quite right in the brain from his brain damage. He was very trusting, and any woman that would have said, "I'll take care of you, George," he would have went. And that's what we know, that last was he was with her.
Okay, and I understand they haven't had enough physical evidence to arrest her. Where do things stand with that, with her? And it looks like a lot of this points towards this woman in terms of his disappearance.
Yes, everything points to her. But unfortunately, because she admits to spending over $3,000 on his debit card. She outward admits it to the police department and says it's because George gave her permission and that he gave her his PIN. Well, I know that my brother could not remember things, so he had his PIN written down on a piece of paper in his wallet. And I don't believe my brother gave permission for somebody to spend he was just too conservative with his money to have let his very last dollar be spent by somebody else.
Okay, if you're just joining us here, we're talking about George Kuhn, who's been missing now, and for 2 years. He's somebody who's in a wheelchair. He had a horrible accident years ago that had him in a wheelchair, and this is his sister, Fran Lacker. And Fran, talk a little bit about what kind of a brother he is, and talk a little bit about what kind of a person George is.
Well, what kind of a brother he was. George and I were only a year apart, so we had a lot of the same friends, and it was kind of fun growing up with somebody who was almost the same age as you, but yet on the other hand, he was always bigger and meaner, and he liked to boss me around. But anytime he got into trouble or anytime he needed something, he'd always come to me. Even as an adult, when he first moved to Florida, he wanted to buy his first house, and he brought me the paperwork to fill it out. And anytime George needed any type of money advice or wanted to know about something with car insurance or home insurance, or he would always come to me. We were close in that way, but boy, we butt heads when it came to everything else. But he was my brother, and I guess that's the way brother and sisters are sometimes.
And a few more quick questions. How did he end up in a wheelchair?
He ended up in a wheelchair 12 years ago. He was down in Port Charlotte. It was a very rainy night, and he walked out in the road and was hit by an SUV. He suffered severe brain damage and severe spinal cord injuries. They didn't even expect for him to live through the night. George was a fighter, and we knew that no matter what the doctor said, that he was going to make it through this. And beyond all odds, he couldn't speak for almost a whole year, or let alone feed himself. But he brought himself through with the help of his family. And to lose him this way, to know that he came so far from doctors not believing he'd live, to disappear over a woman taking advantage of a disabled man, makes me very angry.
And what do you want to tell folks who are watching this right now? I guess if there's anybody that can help.
If there's anybody that can help, or knows of somebody in Hollywood who may have seen him, I would like for them to know that they could Facebook Messenger me under a false name. I just want closure for my family. I don't even need the police to be involved. I'm not looking to have that person punished. I just want my mom, myself, and his children, and the people who love him to have some closure. And if you have any family members out there, especially if they're handicapped, watch over them closely. That's all I can say.
And this is Hollywood, Florida you're talking about.
Yes. Well, this happened here in Venice, Florida. She came to Venice, Florida from Hollywood, Florida. So, you just don't ever know.
And I guess you're telling me her name is Christine Wagner. She has
yes.
a little bit of a criminal history as well.
Her name is Christine Wagner. She spent a good part of the past few years in Hollywood, Florida. She has numerous criminal offenses against her that have to do with drugs, prostitution. She was on parole, when this incident took place. After this happened, she fled to Louisiana, where she continued on her crime spree and was arrested there. She broke parole in the state of Florida, but they would not extradite from Louisiana.
Okay, and finally, is there hope that George is still alive?
Well, I would like to say that there's hope. I always believe in God and believe that things happen for reasons, but George had too many physical things that were wrong with him that required medication on a daily basis. He had, it caught me off guard, but he had a lot of kidney problems. Problems that he couldn't go 24 hours without his medicine. His bank account has not been touched in 2 years. His Medicare card has not been used, so I know that he has not gotten any type of health help. So, no, I don't believe that there is much hope. I wish I was wrong. I'd like to be proven wrong.
Well, our heart aches for you and your family. And you'll remain in our prayers here as you try to find George.
Thank you.
All right, and that is George Kuhn's sister there, and her name is Fran Lacker. And we thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have a lot more on this story coming up tonight at 11 o'clock. We'll see you then. Good night, everybody.